Hello everyone, and good evening. My name is Mark Irshai, and I'm the director of the Odyssey Arts Initiative, an initiative founded in the summer of 2020 for the advancement of art through the open inclusion of diverse perspectives, identities, and backgrounds. As part of our initiative, we are excited to present the Odyssey Institute series, a platform for thinkers, artists, activists, and educators to discuss and brainstorm upon ideas to further Odyssey's mission throughout the arts. The Odyssey Institute's work primarily takes place in the form of conversations, thus encouraging open dialogue on a wide swath of topics. These conversations are then condensed and codified into materials such as handouts, videos on demand, and presentations in the Odyssey Forum. The Forum acts as a resource for artists, administrators, and audience members to learn about ways to promote community building, to include identities and backgrounds in programming and case-making for the arts, and to interact more effectively with audiences. In our latest edition of the Odyssey Institute series, we were joined by guest speaker Walter Bobby McCoy, the Helen Hayes award-winning musical theater music director, and guest moderator Jason Stahl, director of music at Oak Hall School in Gainesville, Florida. You can view the entire conversation as recorded live on our YouTube channel. Today, we are joined by two prominent figures of the Washington, D.C. metro area jazz community. Both are figures that have been a tour de force in helping to promote gender-related equity in the community, and we are honored to have them joining us today in a discussion about the work happening at the Washington Women in Jazz Festival and across the entire D.C. metro area and even internationally. First, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this evening's discussion, Lynn Veronneau. With awards for Best Jazz Group, Best Jazz Vocals, and Best Jazz Recording, and 3 chart-topping, critically acclaimed albums under their belt, Veronneau have captivated audiences in concert halls, festivals, and jazz clubs all over the world. Veronneau's repertoire, performed in English, French, Portuguese, and Spanish, includes samba, bossa nova, swing, jazz, and French chanson, blended with their original compositions. French-Canadian vocalist Lynn Veronneau lights up the stage with her engaging presence and moving interpretations, framed by the band's acoustic guitars and rhythmic energy. Currently based in Washington, D.C., Veronneau draws capacity crowds at major venues such as Blues Alley, Strathmore Music Center, and the Kennedy Center Millennium Stage, the GC Jazz Festival, Tacoma Park Jazz Festivals, and the Alexandria Jazz Festivals. Lynn Veronneau was raised close to Montreal and completed voice studies in France. Her classical training helped her develop a seemingly effortless technique, which Lynn has used to great effect in singing classical, folk, blues, and funk, before settling on her jazz and pop repertoire with Veronneau. We are also lucky to be joined by our guest speaker today, Amy K. Bormet. As an educator and mentor, Amy K. Bormet amplifies her performance tours with outreach masterclasses and workshops, most recently at the Thailand International Jazz Conference in Mahidol University, January 2020, and Los Angeles City College in February of 2020. She is a teaching artist, collaborating with the Kennedy Center's new programming at the Reach to present and perform with her trio, The Future of Jazz is Female, for middle school students. She's a pianist, vocalist, and composer, known for her fearless, freewheeling style and dedication to creating new music. To collaborate with and celebrate women musicians, she started the annual Washington Women in Jazz Festival in 2011, directing, financing, and performing in an annual festival and women-focused events throughout the year in the D.C. area. Amy's recordings are available through Strange Woman Records, which she co-owns with guitarist, producer, and husband, Dr. Matt Divendorf. And now I'd like to take the time to please welcome Amy Bormet and Lynn Veronneau. Amy, Lynn, thank you so much for joining us.
Yay! Hi!
Hello! Thank you for being here. Sorry for that little bit of a weird start. Apologies, everyone, by the way. Slight technical issues. The PowerPoint wasn't working, but anyway, you got the gist of who Amy and Lynn are, and thank you all for being here. And with that, Lynn, Amy, please take it away.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Mark, for this introduction and for the opportunity to have these conversations. I really love the mission of Odyssey and the fact that you're creating this platform for, thought-provoking and in-depth conversations because it's more than just this 5 minute back and forth. We're just gonna sit here with Amy and dive into your life, dive into your music, dive into your mission and your goals. And I'm just really honored to have the opportunity to have the conversation with you.
I'm so excited, Lynn. I love you so much. And I think you're such a delight and such a talented musician. I will tell you all my deepest, darkest secrets. Just ask away,
Okay, go ahead. Let's. Well, the last time we saw each other was exactly a year ago. Was right before everything shut down. We were very hopeful, sitting on the edges of our seat, that we were talking about the 2020 Washington Women in Jazz Festival, and you had a phenomenal lineup all over town and beyond. And unfortunately, holding our breath wasn't good enough because everything closed down on us. But you haven't been idle. In fact, you're just about to launch the 2021 Washington Women in Jazz Festival. And let's take the conversation right there, and then we can dive into your deeper, darker secrets.
Good. Well, I have a PowerPoint of those, so that's fine. Last year was so much was, I was so excited. It was the 10th annual festival. So I was really thinking about, oh man, it's been 10 years of me putting on this festival and, being the executive director, being the artistic director, being the financial director, just taking on this huge project to advocate for me and for the women in the DC scene and to bring all these people together. And it's been amazing 10 years. So I was, you and I had such a good time talking on the radio about the program, but now I'm happy that we've been able to do things online and take things into a different direction. So last summer we did a partnership with the Kennedy Center, which was great. So we got to do some online concerts. And then we did over the holidays, I did Washington Women in Jazz, and I called it WWJFmas, the 12 days of WWJFmas,
Okay.
where I went on the internet for 12 days in a row and interviewed different artists that had been on the festival and been involved since the beginning, and sort of talking about what they were doing and how they were sustaining themselves and trying to create some entertainment and some fun for people over the weird holiday season. And we had a great fundraiser for Christmas, had a sing along, and it was weird. It was really weird, but I'm glad that we did something. I'm glad I think we really had a chance to reach out to a lot of people who were alone, and a lot of people who were suffering and dealing with the holidays are dark anyway. So it was nice to be able to bring something fun and light and some community into that space. So now I'm really, really excited because I feel like I finally am starting to know what I'm doing with the internet, but you never know. It tries to trick you all the time, every day. Every day it tries to trick you. So I don't want to say that I know what I'm doing now, but now that I'm starting to feel more comfortable with all the button pushing and the plugging in and all of it, we are doing a virtual festival for this March that kicks off on March the 6th. And I'm calling it Worldwide Women in Jazz.
I know. I love the fact that you've reframed it. You've reframed it. The WW is here to stay, and it's
here now.
and it's one of the opportunities of the pandemic. I think once we got out of our funk, we realized, okay, there's other opportunities. We need to pursue that. So tell me about this, and then
Yeah.
I have more questions.
I know you have lots of good ideas too, so I'm here to steal all your ideas and just give me them. So I'm really excited because this is something that we have now. I think it was very anxiety inducing for us as musicians to be like, oh, now we have the entire global market at our finger. Anyone with the internet, that's our audience. You know, that's a lot. That's a lot of pressure on yourself. So I feel like the last year has really shown that the DC audience, that our core audience, will go with us and hang out with us anytime. And it doesn't matter what's happening. If something is happening on the internet, they want to hang out, they want to say hi, they want to listen to music, they want to talk about music. And so I wanted to make something that was connecting that community, but also using this opportunity to partner with different organizations that are around the world. So I started with this wonderful saxophonist who lives in Uruguay. Her name's Patricia Lopez. And she was supposed to be here. Somebody's supposed to be. She was supposed to be here last May, and we had booked some gigs together. I had never, we'd only really met on the internet. And she was like, oh, I'm coming to DC to do some research on jazz musicians at the Smithsonian. And I got this grant to come to DC, and I saw your organization, and I wanted to reach out. And I was like, great, let's do some gigs, let's hang out. Yes, like new people, and she's fantastic. And so I had booked us these gigs and all this stuff. And so we were reconnecting in the fall and sort of mourning the fact that we didn't get to play music together over the summer. And we came up with this idea to have a partnership so that she knew a lot of really great women jazz musicians in South America, and so especially in Spanish-speaking South America. So I'm featuring her and 3 other women from South America, 2 from Argentina, 1 from Chile, and then Patricia, who's from Uruguay. And we are doing every Saturday in March will be a concert with one of them. And so that's a new organization that they started called Mujeres de Jazz de Iberoamérica. So so it's Spanish-speaking South American women in jazz, basically. And those are going to be bilingual conversations. Yeah. Oh, we have a special guest.
I know, that's literally the thought. Let me just close that. Oh, there she left.
Checking it out.
I just have to close that door because they're a little noisy bunch here.
Okay. So we're starting that out. We're doing every Saturday. So the very first thing, the festival will be March the 6th. And then I've got also, so it's every Saturday, and then every Monday is a different event that features DC women musicians. And also I'm having, the first Monday will be what I'm calling the Zoom Doom Jam.
Oh, you're going to do a jam on Zoom. Okay.
I am. I've been experimenting, if you will, with several because I feel like Jam Kazam is a large bar to ask people to get into, with the Ethernet and the plugging and Jam Kazam is a lot for people, and some people use it. It's fine, but Zoom can actually have a lot of potential for a jam session. So I've participated in sessions where a lot more free things, because it's very hard to have the time, the time be consistent across the platform. So a lot more open, structured things, a lot more noise-oriented things. And I've done things where there's been 100 participants, and I don't know if you've met Angel Batweed. She was here the last DC Jazz Festival that was in person. She was here. She's a clarinetist and a singer and fantastic musician from Chicago. And she led this jam session where there was 100 people there, maybe more. And she unmuted people randomly, whenever she felt like it. She was directing who was going to be on mute and who was not.
Conducting, I love that.
Yeah, some people were not really participating. So you would just hear like a bird, So, there's lots of fun ways to do it. So I'm calling it Zoom Doom because I think the expectation that we're going to go in there and be like 1, 2, and swing something down is not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. but I have had a lot of fun just making textures and making noise and trying to challenge myself to do something different, to get people to do something different that is specifically for this platform. So that'll be fun, and I think something that I'm hoping that I can bring people along on that. If not, I'll just be jamming out on Zoom with whoever shows up.
I'll be there.
Yeah. We're gonna get wild, man. We're gonna get wild.
Amy, I wanna frame the conversation just a little bit further and give our listeners the opportunity to get into your mind and what happened 10 years ago when the Washington Women in Jazz became, I'm sure first a dream, a mission, and a goal, and how, in your view, it addressed the needs of the musician, back in the day, how it is changing form, perhaps, and not necessarily COVID related, but in the community, what it means now. And I know that the way you work is also equitable. You always have in mind inclusivity, diversity. And so if you could take us on that little kind of that journey, that I think that would be fascinating for our listeners.
Sure. Yeah. I'm doing my best, and I feel like it's a perpetual keeping your chops up on including people, because you have to be, anyone who thinks that they know everybody is going to be very disappointed when they find out they don't. So I just try to make sure that I am available and that I'm open so that people can come to me, and that also in this space, how I can be reaching out to a lot of different people and seeing who's getting sort of left in the mud. And I want to make sure that people are feeling included and being a part of the DC community, especially. So yeah, so something that happened at the beginning, the very beginning of what I wanted to do with Washington Women in Jazz. I graduated from Howard University in 2010, and like all these great things were happening for me. I put out my first record. I had 2 different residencies at the Kennedy Center. I was booking all my stuff myself. You know how that is, like booking,
Yes.
just booking and trying to get some gigs and opening for people and doing everything I could do to be connected to the music scene. And I, of course, started sending all my stuff to festivals and was like, oh, I'd love to get on these bigger festivals. And now I have this record out, and it's like, I'm serious now. I had these delusional thoughts that I think everyone has for their first record when they don't have any budget and they don't have any PR and they don't have anything. And I, wrote all my own materials and put all my own press releases together and did the best I could and sent everything out and got some radio play and did fine. But the things that weren't coming was the larger bookings, that people were not really interested in even like listening to my music. I never even heard back from people or that type of thing, which I don't think is abnormal for anyone.
No, it's not.
And so that, that was a kind of a heartbreaking moment for me. And then I started to look at who was playing on the festivals, and I wasn't seeing any women musicians, any women instrumentalists. I was seeing, some female singers, yes, but even within that, it was, it was a very male dominated space at a lot of the festivals. And then not only that, it was the same names over and over again at the festivals. And most of the festivals were either straight ahead, or they were like booking R&B singers and calling it a jazz festival or a smooth jazz festival. Like I didn't really qualify for those spaces. So I wanted to have a festival that was kind of like, would have a space for a lot of different types of jazz, because it seems like everything is jazz to me. I'm not the jazz police. So I wanted to have a space for really good music. And on top of that, I knew that DC was not getting the type of credit that it deserved. So I was super, super inspired. The residency I had, the Mary Lou Williams residency I had at the Kennedy Center was, Billy Taylor had put together this Mary Lou Williams festival I'd gone to forever. And since I was a teenager, they had jam sessions, and I would go to the jam session on Millennium Stage and like sing Autumn Leaves, and then like go over and play the piano, and like it was the coolest thing ever. 15-year-old me exploded when I suddenly met all these women and like what is happening. So that had been a big part of my consciousness. And then also being at Howard University and seeing the amazing women in the vocal department, especially at Afro Blue, really supporting each other, and the way they show up for each other's gigs and show up for each other's, now it's like showing up for each other's records and all that stuff. I thought that this is what we need, is because people think that women have this like men have it in business, and women, we don't have that in business the way that men are sort of, there's networking in that way. So I wanted to create this women jazz musician network that when I was playing with a lot of singers, I'd be the only woman in the band, and I'd be like, well, don't you want to hire Karen? Like, don't you want? So I was already doing that sort of, sneaky kind of advocacy things. Like, don't you want to, maybe include some more women in your band, or have a woman horn player or whatever. So the very first festival was super small because I couldn't get a big venue. I couldn't get anybody to sign up for this. I had a lot of reactions that were people who remain unnamed, who were like, yeah, but why do you think you need to do that now? And do you really think that's commercially viable? And, oh yeah, but can they really play though? And I'm like,
oh my God, that hurts.
So that was brutal. And so I gratefully, Kelly at Twins, and Kelly and Wendy were like, let's go, and I don't think that was a coincidence. At the time, I didn't think about it, but a woman-owned jazz club,
yes.
That's not a coincidence that she gave me.
So for those who don't know, Twins Jazz was a destination in Washington, D.C. for decades. And they gave a lot of very young, just starting out musicians a stage. And Kelly is one of the twin sisters who started the club, and she was always there to support you, to make the music happen. And that's where I got my first gig too. So
I mean, that was what we could do, what we could make happen, and it's almost a DIY space because you had to fix up everything to try to make it work before the show started. But I when Twins closed, I told a lot of people I thought that my early death, jazz musicians, everybody's talking about, oh, what would you, all these famous jazz musicians die early. Mine would be the TV VCR combo at Twins falling on my head, the one that was right above the piano. Just taking me out, I'm death by a TV VCR combo. But
that's not gonna happen. So that's a good thing.
Not gonna happen. So I feel like my life insurance rates might go down. So I don't know. But they let us have this space, and I loved it. And I at that very same time, Capital Bop was starting up, Bohemian Caverns Jazz Orchestra was starting up. So I played in there every Monday. So I was advertising there. And we got a lot of people. I mean, it was packed in that little spot. We got a lot of press, but like underground kind of, city paper, not the Washington Post. Like everything was sort of, it had a really great feel, and very word of mouth, and people really showed up. And it was great. It was awesome. I paired a singer with a horn player, and then I had the trio, the backing band trio of women. So it was a delight. And so from there, it picked up a lot of steam. And then I went into the next year and I said, this is the success. This is the track record that I had. And I had people who were interested in other venues that were interested in putting on Washington Women in Jazz, putting on partnering with me to create concerts and put on events. And so I just started sort of crafting it, and it's been really fascinating. And I've been able to do it very independently and very DIY and very low budget. And every year I can do something different. And I've been super, super flexible, and then it has served me well. So now I can move into this virtual festival. Is like, I didn't have to ask anybody for permission. I am the I am the one behind the scenes planning it. So, I fundraised for it, and now we're doing a virtual festival. And yeah, I don't feel like I have to worry about it if I had this larger organization. So I stay very small and and very low to the ground, so that I can sneak around doing what I want to do, and putting on the music I want to put on, and putting on the artists that I want to put on, a lot of whom have, since then have played at the Kennedy Center, and since then have played at the DC Jazz Festival. But the first place they played in DC was at Washington Women in Jazz Festival. So it's been super cool and super collaborative. And I still keep the core of women jazz musicians who are in DC as the foundation of the festival, so that when we invite someone from LA or someone from New York, they're playing with us. So we're getting the exposure that we need.
Yes.
And then when I was living in LA for 5 years, and when I was living in LA, and Lee Pilzer would come, wonderful saxophonist, then she would play with my band in LA. But she already knew, some of the people, because they had come out for Washington Women in Jazz. And so it just was a really great way to create a network of women musicians that is based around and focused on the DC scene. And I have people who, like, every year, like, can I come back? When can I gotta get it back in there. Like, okay, let's make this happen. Like, I'll sleep on your floor. I don't care. Let's go. Let's play a gig. It'll be fun. And it's really created a lot of, like, a really fun reunion vibe within the festival.
It's a little bit like, we've landed on Mars, and you've put a stake in the ground. And I like that you have created this identity for the community here. And that it stays grounded here, although obviously now, gradually you're going global. But what was the response from the musicians community, of any gender, and the audience? So did people's minds get blown? Like, oh my goodness, they walk in and there's a lineup of women musicians, which is rare in any genre, in any style. What was their reaction? What's the reaction of the musicians when they're on stage? What are the reverberations you see in the musicians community, and then the audience community?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many great things that have happened that I've really been able to enjoy and benefit from. Which one of my favorite things that I really like, I really like teaching, and I've attended and then taught at Washington Jazz Arts Institute, Davey Yarbrough's fabulous program. He's a phenomenal educator, saxophonist, and taught at Duke Ellington for years, and recently retired after 40 years or something in the DC public school system, a tremendous amount of time. And so he has a free jazz program for high school and college students. And I have been able to, one of the things that I saw when I was teaching there is that a lot of women were playing in high school and then didn't go to college for music, or went to college but just stopped playing completely, or whatever, didn't make that transition over from being student musicians to being professional musicians, which is extremely difficult no matter who you are, no matter what your identity is. But there's things that compound that. And one of that was that I felt like there weren't a lot of women that, that had a squad. One of the things that I did, I was a very loud person, and I continue to be a loud person, but especially as a younger person, I was very aggressive and loud, and I knew what I wanted to do. And I would go out to jam sessions, at 16, and you didn't pull me, you didn't call my name, and you didn't put that was, and I think that's not in a lot of people's wheelhouse. And so I wanted to create some, on the festival, I started creating jam sessions and making sure that it would be a band of women for the jam session. And that created this huge, people could show up, and I had people say to me, oh, I never felt like I could go to a jam session. And then I saw this, that it was going to be all women. And I felt like, oh, well, this is clearly this is the night that I'm going to stop being shy and come and try something. And then they come to other things in the festival. And so then from there, from sort of that combination of the jam session and teaching, I started the Emerging Artist Showcase, which started as a competition, which was a terrible idea. It only lasted like, I think 2 years as a competition, but I used to have it as a competition, and then I would, you'd win a gig at the Washington Women in Jazz Festival. How convenient. I know the booker. And so and that was weird though, because that wasn't the vibe I wanted, because everybody was kind of just like quiet and nervous and not talking to each other.
And you really wanted that connection. That's
Yeah.
the thing that you were looking for. So what
Yeah.
happened?
So I blew that up. That was a disaster. And I had some fun times though while that was happening. I had like people's parents coming and yelling at me, and she should have won. And I was like,
Oh, no.
because I didn't judge. I would bring on like celebrity, musician judges from DC and have other people judge, so I didn't have to deal with it. so I'd have complaining about the judges and whatever. And so I just blew the whole thing up and it just turned it into a showcase, not a competition. And then
We'll just have to live with the dog.
coming for you. And then would have that showcase. It's all good. Good.
I'll do it.
I can.
Can everybody saying hi? Thank you, guys. Thank you. There you go. That's my family.
Awesome.
C'est la vie. C'est la vie.
Magnifique. So I turned it into a showcase, and it's been really great. And the last 4 or 5 years, it's been sponsored by Levine. They've let us have the space. And then last year, I got a sponsorship from PG Arts, and they let us have the public playhouse because I had too many people to fit in the space I was using before. So
Oh, wow. That's fabulous.
I had like 22, 23 people. So we had the lighting, and we had the stage, and we had the sound, and we had the recording, and I had women from California and from New York and from Miami and from everywhere, Maine. It was a delight. It was so fun. And then everybody got, we met the day before, and I, tried my best to organize people together, and then would have everybody play as much as possible together, and then play their music. It was mostly original music, and put on a showcase. It was very much like, this is what it is to be a professional. You have one day, and then
and that's what you got to do. And 2
hours. Yeah, it's perfect.
I just want to interject how important performing is. And talk a little bit broader about jazz culture in general, and how important it is to just be thrown into boiling water to explore your creative self through improvisation, to the challenges and the opportunities of improvisation. So I don't know. Talk to me a little bit about the challenges that are inherent to jazz performance. And I want to link that also to the opportunities of jazz performance, and how maybe as a young, or not necessarily that young, but somebody coming out into a performing world, how important it is, how much they learn by being on that stage, as opposed to, performing at home or in class, for instance.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm putting too many things in that bowl, but there's so much to talk about.
It's all in there. You definitely are I think for musicians that's it. Like that's all it is. like the practicing is great, but the practicing is not gonna really get you anywhere. Like I just it has to lead to something, and so much of what is wrong with jazz education right now, other than the white supremacist patriarchy that it holds up, is the methodology, which directly reflects that kind of control freak Western classical white supremacist mentality from the conservatory, trying to be overlaid on a music that is about individuality, a music that's about your own, as being as creative, so creative that you explode. Like there's nothing but creativity. There's nothing but being in the moment and responding to the moment with other people and creating and having a conversation. And so, you know, a lot of that, it is, that's what it is. So something that I've really enjoyed, and I've really, the way that I was taught, going back to Davey Yarbrough, who I just love, obviously he's a delight, just being a phenomenal educator. He knew that. And as soon as I started going to Duke Ellington, we went out everywhere. I mean, I had dress clothes in my locker because I wouldn't know if we had a gig that day. Like, we were out all the time, fundraising for this school, playing at the Four Seasons, playing at the old folks home, playing at the library, playing a concert. Like, every couple of days we would be out. And
so the stage was as much your school as
Absolutely.
the program was.
Absolutely. Always on the spot. And then there was always people coming through. So people would come through to the program, and, you know, I mean, this was a full high school, so we had to go to school. But we also, the whole morning, I would come in early. It'd be, 7:00 in the morning, and we'd be playing music, and people would come in who were touring, who had also gone to Ellington. And that's why Davey Yarbrough is one of the best people ever, because he's got such a depth of knowledge and a depth of connection to the musicians in DC. So people would come through, and you never knew who was going to be there. And Andrew White would be there, and it would be 7:30 in the morning, and like, you better play well, because this guy has transcribed every single John Coltrane solo that ever existed and has played with Stevie Wonder, and like, you better sound pretty good. So like, I was always on the spot. We always had, we had the juries with the notes, and everything was, concerts and performances and playing in front of people and everything all the time. And then, the college people would come through, and if you didn't play right, you didn't get the money. You didn't get that free trip to, Northwestern, or free trip to Iowa, or free trip to Miami to audition. Like, you had to really, it was a very performance oriented place. And that continues, that whole methodology with Washington Jazz Arts Institute. I was going out, 16 years old, like I said, going out to jam sessions, going out trying to talk to people. And I just feel like so much of that is missing. And the decimation of the club scene, the decimation of the even like U Street, the strip of U Street, and going into Adams Morgan, the venues that had music, was it, I mean, that's the difference between me being in high school 20 years ago and now, is that now we're like, okay, maybe Blues Alley is gonna stay. Like, that's it. That's all we got, So it's dark. It's a dark time. But the whole point is that you have to create your own performance opportunities as much as possible. Even if you are just starting out and you think, you have your imposter syndrome of, I don't know if I can do it, like, whatever. You have to create those opportunities. And I think that's something that, you go out and you approach new spaces, and you approach different artists, and you say, can I open for you? And have you ever thought about having a concert series in this space? Or have you ever thought about this? Or, maybe we could do this, and put together proposals and things like that. I think that's the only way that as musicians we're going to function, because nobody's going to do that for us. And if they do, it's not going to be as cool.
Right.
So it's not going to be the way we want.
But this is so much in your spirit, and I want to link it back to the Washington Women in Jazz Festival, and how also you can approach a festival, you can approach an organization that's already very much implanted in the community, and just like you've been doing, you're a passionate mentor. You're also a passionate educator. So tell us a little bit, under the umbrella of the festival, what are the education opportunities that that you pursue, and the mentorship? And are you also, pairing people and saying, you need to talk to this person, and can people just come and bother you and, pick your brains and
leave me alone? No, yeah. I try to be as open as possible, but honestly, this pandemic has been a great boundary setting opportunity for me, because I feel like people are like, she's not doing anything, so let me call her up and see if she wants to spend 2 hours talking about my kid's college audition. I love you. Like, I'll give you 10 minutes on that, but like, don't go to Berkeley. That's all I got. Okay. So like, like what, I don't know what to say, but I do think that a lot of that stuff is very organic, and a lot of it comes out of having these events with as many people as possible squished into one space.
I think so too.
And obviously we're missing them even more now, but that's that organic connection. The attempt to replicate that has been so difficult over the last year. And we have tried, like that's why I have to be intent about doing this virtual festival and getting people to connect, because it's so important, and we're just gonna be sad if we don't do it. Even sadder if we don't, think about things that we can plan in the future together, and collaborations that we can have with organizations and people and countries and travel, and new musicians to play with and new music to write, and I'm going to write something for this person and they're going to write something for me, and we're going to work on a song together, or work on an arrangement together, or collaborate on a recording together. Like all those things, I think we have to be a lot more intentional about now that we're in this virtual space. Otherwise we can just, like at the beginning, I just sort of drowned in everything, because it was like, I'm just going to do a bunch of videos.
Right.
And then I was like, I don't, I'm broke, and this is very stressful, and I'm over here trying to set up the camera and the lights and the whole, and I spend the whole day trying to click the button, like all that kind of stuff can be overwhelming. So there's definitely a balance there from being able to connect to people and work with people and reach out to people and find new people, but also taking some time to develop your craft and keep writing your own music and creating your own. So
I've been very impressed to see that first of all, that you've got a festival this year, which last year the timing was just so bad because you had an absolute stellar lineup, and everything crashed literally the few days before the festival was about to open. So and for some of us, finding the right energy has been challenging, and you've got a program this year. So let's talk about the program itself, and let's talk about the dates. It's opening on March 6th.
Yeah.
And that's my birthday, by the way, so thank you.
It's free party.
It's a free party, yay. Yeah. So where do people go? What do people do to be part of the festival, to be
I'm
watching?
Everything, I have nine events, and everything but one is going to be on our Washington Women in Jazz Facebook page, and also on our YouTube page, which I think is like the most anemic YouTube page ever. I just started a YouTube page for Washington Women in Jazz. I have 18 subscribers. So if anyone is on YouTube later after this, feel free to subscribe to /WW Jazz Fest, because I could use your subscription. But it'll be live streaming on both. And then the one event that I have that's not going to be live streaming is a ticketed event for Andi Music that I'm doing. They have a solo piano series, so I'm playing by myself.
Wonderful.
Hence the title. And it's partially sponsored by the DC Jazz Festival, which does a solo piano thing at Andi Music. So it's a big multi organization push on that. So I'm hoping people will support them and buy tickets through their website to watch that concert. But all of the South American women are they're going to be 30-minute concerts and then 15-minute bilingual conversations that are happening at the end of this. So everything will be less than an hour, and just super fun. And then of course I tried to include some of the people that I haven't been able to include everybody, because it's just so much. So I had so many people planned for last year, but I did pull some people from last year in hopes of getting them to perform this year. So Lee Pilzer, saxophonist, and I are we're recording a podcast actually for Montpelier in Laurel, Maryland. So we're recording there. We're recording Saturday, but it'll be released later in March. And then Jessica Boykin-Settles, a wonderful vocalist, and Howard University professor, and Karen Chapdelaine, who of course a fabulous bass player. and fellow French Canadian.
Yes.
The two of them are going to do this really cool stripped down bass and voice thing. So that'll be really fun. And the four of us were, I have pictures of us that I posted on our website of us at the very first Washington Women in Jazz at Twins. And Karen's like, "Why'd you put up that picture of me with my messy ponytail and my glasses?" I'm like, "You look great." 2011 Karen looks fantastic. She's like, but we were supposed to all play this gig together in Montpelier. So instead, now we're breaking into duos and recording some music.
It's definitely changing. Pardon me. It's definitely changing a lot of musical parameters because you may go from a big band and all of a sudden you're a trio. So music is sounding very different with its challenges and its opportunities. So can we say that this is your 10th anniversary then since last year?
I don't even, now I'm just confused. I don't know what to call it. I've just been calling it the first virtual festival. I don't know. Maybe I start over with virtual numbers. Roman numerals. I don't know where to go.
Amy, if we talk a little bit about your vision, beyond our COVID and other, ailments like that, your vision, your mission, your goal for the growth and prosperity of the festival. What's your big dream? Where do you see the festival going? Where do you see yourself growing? And I have so many questions, and there'll be more questions later, but I want to talk about pedagogy also. How would you change the parameters under which we're educating musicians and jazz musicians in particular? So pick any of these. And
they're all related. So I can just keep reminding me. I'll just knock down all the pins. Okay, so number one for the festival going forward, for myself going forward, which are basically the same things, because I have not become a giant nonprofit DC arts organization like so many people have harassed me and told me that that's the only way forward. It's the only way you're going to make it work is get in line for a grant like everybody else. I didn't do that. And that's my choice. And the reason I didn't do that is because I frankly don't want to deal with it. So I've made a lot of choices to make this festival the proper size, that I don't want to be the DC Jazz Festival. I have no interest in bringing Esperanza Spalding, as awesome as it would be. Esperanza, if you're listening, come on down. But I don't need that. And my proof of concept for my festival is that DC women are incredible musicians. And so that proof of concept doesn't change. And when I bring in other artists, like I said, it's still a collaboration with me, with the women in DC, with our community showing up for it. So I don't, you know what I mean? Like I'm the right size for what I want to be.
Right. You don't need a big headliner, star power. Yeah.
I don't care. I think you can see that in a lot of other things. But like people are going to go, they're going to go to Walmart and buy stuff at Walmart, and I'm going to be your happy neighborhood hang that's super unique and super specific and regional. I don't want to be just the same made in China stuff. Like I want to be unique, and I want the festival to be that way. And so that's why I've made that, a lot of people say, oh, 10 years, it could get really huge. And I'm like, well, yeah, it could get really huge, but I don't need Shaka Khan to come and play. Like I, yet again, would love Shaka Khan to come and play, but
she would love it too.
We have a blast.
I think they would just love to discover the DC scene.
She's killing it. She'd do that funky Nine Tunisia, and we'd be. I saw her at the Detroit Jazz Festival. It was one of the best shows ever. So I'm not trying to like stop anybody from going to see Shaka Khan. I'm just saying those opportunities are already there for Shaka Khan and for Shaka Khan fans. I want people to know that DC has a very unique scene, and that it's something that we can support as a community. And this is my angle on that. Women in Jazz is my angle on that. And it continues to be satisfying to me. So every year I'm like, oh, this is a pain. Like, I don't want to plan this. I don't want to do these emails. And every year at the end, I'm like, this was satisfying because number one, I got to play music with people I like. Number two, a lot of people showed up and gave a lot of support. And number three, this community is fantastic. Like DC has such a great music community and we don't talk about it. And we pretend like, I mean, I love the DC Jazz Festival, but it's like, you got to bring these big headliners in or people aren't going to sponsor it. I don't want to be caught in that. I don't want to be caught in that budget. I don't want to be caught in that type of paperwork. I don't want to be caught up as forever an administrator. I like the percentage of how much administrating that I'm doing right now. This is it, like I'm good. And this is to me, this is a very satisfying project. This is, I just moved back to DC after being in LA, and this has been such like even when I was in LA, I was coming to DC, and it was so important to me. And moving back here was a big part of that. It was like, well, I love being in LA. I love playing with musicians in LA, but like DC's got it going on. And the community here is so supportive.
It is, yeah.
Like, I love LA, but it's hard to get 20 people to come out to something. like they got their own gigs. Like everybody's got something else going on. Okay, but DC, you can get people to come out, you can get people to hang out. And people are, this whole pandemic, people have been texting me, oh, is this, did you apply for this grant? And did you know about this? And did you know, so this community is always churning and brewing and coming up with new things. And it's a very politically active community. And that's another thing that's super important to me is that, I'm taking a stand for the things that I think are important. So, like we're talking about education, we're talking about equity in pay for women musicians, all those types of things. So I would love for this to just keep being something that the community likes and the community responds to, and that I keep enjoying. And so that's my only plan. Like the 25th anniversary, you'll just see me in the back being like, yeah, that was cool. Yeah, like, hey, cool, great show. But yet again, more money and more people is always fun. I would not turn it down. But it's not my sight
It's
line.
not your goal, right? It's not your goal. You're not creating a business. Basically, you're not creating like a business model. You really are creating a community model, and I think that's why people keep flocking back. You're creating so much value. The fact that now you're sort of I keep repeating, you're going global. You're talking about education. Let's talk about inclusion. So you made a stand to include everybody who identifies as a woman, and I think that's really important, and I think that's important to you. Have you thought also about inclusion of different abilities, or people who are coming, like maybe unlike you had the chops, you were not intimidated by all of the demands that were put on you as a young musician. Others may not be quite there. I know, it's not like your umbrella is not big enough already, but I love to pick your brains about new concepts. So, perhaps musicians who are blind, musicians who have, physical limitations or others. Just want to pick your brains about, God knows what will come out of it. I remember a few years ago, I asked you, when are you coming to Northern Virginia? And your answer was like, Lynn, I started working on it as you open your mouth or something like that. And then you did come to Virginia.
It's always a good idea. I haven't done anything specifically, with the disability community or blind community or the deaf community or anything like that. But I would love to. And like I said, I'm always trying to keep my ears open and my eyes open and everything to see what's happening in the community and to make myself available too for people to come with collaborative projects. I know you talked about people who might not have played, been like older people who play or who are just getting into the music or that type of thing. Because I do feel like that's something that we neglect as performers. We kind of are like, oh yeah, we're just, unless you learned as you were a kid, doesn't matter. And I think that I've been able to create some spaces where we've had not only the traditional jam sessions, but also some freer jam sessions that were more accessible for like classical musicians getting into
Right.
jazz, or for people who were just starting out, or for people who didn't play at all and wanted to sing something or say something or read something or act something out or dance. Like I've had a lot of those more open jam sessions that have been really fun and really satisfying, to play like improvisation games and talk about what it is to communicate and what it is to improvise, and what it is to respond and what it is to initiate something. And those have been almost more rewarding than a traditional jam session, because that's how I've seen a lot of really serious, I don't even want to call people fans, because it's not fans at that point, it's community come together. And one of my favorite people that I've ever worked with is this woman, Biggie Binklow, and she lives in Sweden, and she came, we did a collaboration with Sweden Women in Jazz. So she came and she brought a 5-piece band, and she was like phenomenal. They played at the Swedish embassy, and then my band played afterwards, and then we went to Sweden. And on both ends, we were doing educational workshops. We were talking about gender equity in music. We were talking about creating space for women, for people who don't typically, their identity is not seen in music programs, in those spaces. And so the more we can advocate for this broadening of music, this inclusivity, for constant inclusivity, the more we can advocate for that, and the more we can be aware of who's being left out, I think is really important. A lot of women in jazz programs are white women in jazz, and they don't want to mention it. They don't want to talk about it. They're like, we're creating equity. And I'm like, it's all white women. Like you that's great. I'm really glad, but like I'm very sensitive on that. Like it should not be that way. And a lot of the privilege that comes with being a musician is having people pay for your lessons, is having people to drive you to your performances, is having those opportunities to be in the right school district where they had the program, and we're seeing, if we specifically look at DC, we're seeing the obliteration of middle school jazz band programs do not exist in the city anymore. And what is that doing? Who is that shutting out of the program? It's not shutting up people who go to private school. It's not, and so we're shutting out an entire generation of lower income students from the thing that we love the most. And so to me, that's the true emergency.
There are a few summer camps.
Yeah.
And some summer camps have scholarships too. So but it is a summer camp. It is just a few weeks out of your whole
and if you don't have the instrument, a lot of times they make you give the instrument back in the summer, or they, if you didn't have the money for the private lessons, or you didn't even know about the camp because your teacher didn't know about, like there's so many things that we need to make sure that when we're talking about education, we're talking about how we can create a playing field for people to get into this music. Otherwise we're screwed. Like 20 years in the future, nobody's gonna listen to it.
I'm aware,
they'll all be dead.
I'm aware of some stuff in the pipeline, that's probably targeted at post-COVID. So I mean that can be the topic of other conversations. What do you think that we can do as a community to emphasize and help and grow and contribute to building this this vision? Whether we're musicians, whether we're men, women, audience, parents, old folks, what community do you see bringing to the conversation and the growth?
Well, I think that this community is such a active community and a supportive community that they're always showing up. The audience is always showing up. People are paying attention. What we're not seeing is the administration on a local level in DC really committing to the arts. It's been just a series of disappointments with Muriel Bowser, with the current administration, and the promises that we've had as musicians specifically in DC, but also in the DMV area. Just a lack of interest in true investment in the things that we have said we needed that the musician community has come forward and said, this is who we are and this is what we need. We've presented things that we need, like middle school music programs, like practice room spaces at libraries, like studio spaces, music studio spaces, and accessibility to technology for music students and for the public. We presented a lot of ideas of things that we want to happen. We had, I'm sure you remember the music census, that the results have never been released for the music census. So despite that, it's been, so those types of things, I think we need the community to get behind us and say, we need the data for the music census to say, this is how many musicians there are in the area, so that people know that, the numbers that were on their tax forms. A lot of people will not put musician on their tax form, even though they're working as a musician, because they put teacher because they're working as a teacher, or post office employee. Like, a lot of people have many jobs, and so to be able to say you're just a musician on your tax form is not happening, so that we don't have an accurate count of how many musicians are in the area. So that's the first thing, is we need the census data released to the public so people can see how many musicians there truly are in this area, because we already know, as musicians, as artists, everyone knows that this is the top caliber arts town. We have the money in this town. We have the people who like the arts in this town. The only part that's missing of this triangle of support is the support from the city. So
and I imagine you're connecting dots also between the jazz community, the classical community, the the go-go community. There's so many musical communities. It's a ton of people.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many musicians in DC. So it's moving forward. We really need to make sure that we have the funding that we need to have those spaces, and to make sure that we can thrive, and that we can, just even remotely function as musicians in DC. Other places have things that we don't have, and there's no excuses, because DC has the money and they have the space.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation, and Mark, I could go on and on. I love talking to Amy.
I'm sure you could, but it's a pleasure to have you both. Thank you guys for being here. We're not quite done, though. So for everybody who's watching, you've probably seen a couple questions come in the chat. If you're new, welcome, and thank you for being here. So we love to do a rather lengthy Q&A, actually, segment at the end of our talks. We feel that it's kind of important to have the conversation now open up with you guys. So please feel free to put your questions in the YouTube chat. I'll be checking them. I have my phone here, pulling them up. So I will be, asking these questions. You can ask Amy, you can ask Lynn, you can ask both. So we're going to start actually right away with a question from Ken Avis. He was the first one. I think this is a question mainly directed for you, Amy. Ken asks, can the Washington Women in Jazz Festival reach out and build a new jazz audience? And he puts that in air quotes. What are the obstacles and solutions to make a start on that? And how do we capture the heart of a new female, or male for that matter, audience?
Yeah, we just have to have fun things for people to go to and not be jerks. I think a lot of musicians are jerks, and a lot of artists are elitist and snobby, and they don't care if you listen at all. And I'm not that person. And so I want to make sure that we're creating spaces that people want to be in, that we see them when they come in, and we recognize them, and we talk to them, and we bring them into the community, instead of making it feel like, and now I will go on stage and you will listen to my art. Like, that's cool, but we're over that, right? And that's why I feel like, especially women, if you do something like that, I'm never coming back to your stuff. Like, if you don't even acknowledge the audience and thank them for coming, I'm not coming. So that's something that is really important to me, is that, taking that time to talk to people, shocking, before the show, after the show, whenever you can, trying to create, like you're talking about, Mark, like a Q&A space, so that after the show, there's something that people are already expecting, a talk beforehand. If you're doing something that people haven't seen before, sometimes you got to give them a little bit, give them a little cookie with it, like, here, let me tell you what this is going to be about. This is why we do this. I love to explain pieces, because you can play the weirdest, most out there stuff, and if beforehand you're like, this is what we're doing, and this is why I wrote this piece, then people will come with you on the journey. You want to bring them with you. You don't just want to play your thing and float off into space and live in your own bubble. You want to bring them in with you. So like, for example, I played at Georgetown. I had all these awesome Georgetown students and all these people came, and I wrote a piece. I written the piece the day before, and I had my trio, and I'd written it for a woman that was shot and killed in Brazil, who was a political activist for Black Lives Matter in Brazil. And I just, I had all this, in the middle, there was like this screaming part on, I had Karen Chapdelaine just screaming on the bass, and then the drums were very violent and gunshots and just a lot of sound. And so there was all these things that if I hadn't introduced that piece and said what it was about, and that, I'm here, I'm trying to convey this violence, and I'm trying to convey this is the feeling and the emotion that I'm trying to convey. And this is who this is Marielle Franco. This is who she was. And she's important. And this is how I try to pay my respects for that and to advocate for that. And then to also just be able to share things that I think are important. It's like, why is this important? Why did I write this piece? If we do that and we pay attention to people, and we tell them when things are happening. I feel like musicians are very bad at that too. You have to tell people when things are happening. Then they will show up. And, don't trust Facebook and Twitter. Get your email list together, because email always comes through. But Facebook and Twitter, they'll hide your stuff. So make sure that you tell people when it is. And then when they come, be grateful that they came. You're not God's gift. Like you're cool. But you don't have to act like, whatever. So I just, don't be a jerk. I guess that's my tip.
I mean, that's pretty good advice for anybody, really. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess this is another question for you, Amy. This comes from Yana Nicole. Thank you, Yana, for being here. Yana was a former moderator, and Ken Avis was actually the speaker for that talk. So it's nice to see you guys back in the chat. Yana asks, first she says, thank you for a great talk, as always. Thank you for being here, as always. She asks, since Amy mentioned diversity in the festival programming, what sound should a band have in order to qualify for the Washington Women in Jazz Festival?
Trick question, I dig it. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit, is how these jazz festivals sort of get pigeonholed into like, this is straight ahead jazz. Real jazz, and this is, smooth jazz, sexy jazz, and this is, whatever, avant-garde jazz. And I don't know, there's not a lot of avant-garde jazz festivals, but there are a few. And so I like to be able to just kind of, I want to have a Brazilian jazz thing, great. I want to have avant-garde thing, great. I want to have smooth jazz R&B thing, great. Like, it really doesn't matter to me. The compelling part is having people who are fun, who are interested in engaging with our community. Like I said, people who aren't jerks, people who are the opposite of jerks, and are really interested in collaborating with DC musicians. So I don't want to bring down somebody and their whole band. That's not interesting to me. I want to bring down one artist and have them see what happens if we put them in the middle of our thing. And how does that change the flavor of what's going on in DC? To take them, not only if somebody comes, I'm not just bringing them for the concert, I'm taking them to Duke Ellington School of the Arts, I'm taking them to Howard University, I'm taking them to Montgomery College, I'm taking them to Washington Jazz Arts Institute, I'm taking them to the DC Jazz Jam, I'm taking them to Capitol Hill Jazz Jam. Like, we are hitting the scene together, all the students, all the people, anyone we can find. I want to bring this person down and see what happens. So that's kind of, so I don't really have like a full band. If there's like a whole band of women musicians in DC that want to play something on my festival, that would be awesome too. If I just didn't know them and suddenly they're here, that is definitely a distinct possibility, because there's people coming in and out of DC all the time. But in terms of specific musicians who want to do something on the festival, who are already in DC, get to know me, get to know what's going on with Washington Women in Jazz, and I will do my best to find somewhere to highlight you and to feature you and to bring you in. But this honestly is not about individuals as much, other than me, because I centered it around myself, it's about bringing people together. So like, if you want to be a part of the festival, you are a part of the festival when you show up at the jam session and you meet people and you connect. And then the next year I'll bring you and have you play with somebody that you might have met at the jam session. So it's much more organic than a traditional application process or something like that. It's more like, I've had a lot of people that come to me and say, I know you're doing stuff in March and this is what I want to do. I'm going to put on a gypsy jazz show and it's going to be this. And here's the band, it's all women and it's all, DC, Baltimore women, and I'm bringing one guest artist. And I'm like, that sounds great, let's do it. And so I do put my weight behind a lot of events as a promoter, especially if they're in March. So I'll try my best to connect them into Washington Women in Jazz. So there's a lot of different ways that you can be involved, but all you'd have to do is show up.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. All you have to do is show up.
Yeah.
There were a couple follow-up questions, actually the same question asked by two people, by Lisa Merriam and by Connor Couch. They were asking about the music census that you brought up earlier. They were wondering who conducted that music census.
So that was there were so many partners on that. The two that were the leads were Georgetown University, Anna Salenza, who's there, and is I believe the head of the musicology program. I'm not sure. Anna's lovely, and she is a big part of Music City's programming, and so every year she has conferences talking about how to create better music cities. And so she was a part of the census, and also the Capitol Hill Jazz Foundation. But I know there was like 5 or 6 organizations. I mean, the city was a sponsor of this, so it wasn't like we just went rogue and started, going out counting hands. Like we sent out. There was a campaign. There was a lot of information. It was professionally done, and it was part of the Georgetown University research program. Lynn, do you know who else was involved? I can't remember.
I can't remember either, but I think you've nailed the major players there. And I just wanted to add that it was DC specific, so I don't think it included Virginia and Maryland, where a lot of us musicians live. Also, work in DC at times. So if I'm not wrong, right?
I'm not. I can't remember now. I think it included anyone who worked in DC.
Oh, who worked in DC? Okay, I thought it was resident space. Okay, so more to research there.
Yeah. So, and I know that also this was something that this was supposed to be the beginning of an initiative to really make this happen, but we haven't even had that. This was in 2017, so we haven't even had that information, which is now outdated, because obviously the last year has changed a lot of things for a lot of people. So, this needs to have follow-up. This needs to be a regularly occurring event. To have this census of the musicians in the area.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess it makes sense for it to encapsulate everybody who's working in the DC area. I think it's an interesting angle on it. Folks, we have about 10 minutes in our Q&A. Please keep those questions coming. We'd love to keep asking them. I'm going to actually ask one of my own. Since I'm not seeing a couple. We need an artist census for Fairfax, says Lisa Merriam. Absolutely. There should be an artist census for every town and city and borough and district, really. I think it's so important for cultural growth is to understand what's going on culturally in these places. I want to ask kind of a general, broad question, and this is kind of targeted for both of you. Please feel free to answer the same way or differently, however you're moved, because I know great minds think alike. I'm sure that, we have about 14 live viewers right now. I'm sure we'll have many more over the course of the next several months, people who will go back and view this, and hopefully people will go back and view this in several years from now as well. And this will continue to be a resource for people who are interested in jazz, people who are interested in equity for women in jazz. For somebody who might be learning about this for the first time, for somebody who might be maybe not even familiar with jazz itself as a culture or as a music form or as an art form, what is one thing one or two things that you would want them to know, to be hopeful for, in terms of the field, in terms of the development of the art form, as well as the development of equity happening in that art form. Lynn, I'd actually love to start with you, if you don't mind.
Wow, that's a big question, Mark.
Sorry, I can't help it.
That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. We want to
Absolutely.
think a little deeper.
Yeah.
What to be hopeful for? I'd say there's a lot of things. First of all, I don't, I've been in DC for like 20 years, right? And this is where my musical life has occurred. And like Amy mentioned many times during the conversation, the community element here is very real. And you will hear from, musicians moving here from elsewhere, that this is rare. This is very rare. So if you are here in the Washington, D.C. area, that's something to be very hopeful for. There's people to talk to. There's people who will listen to you. There's people who will advise you. There's mentorship programs. Also, I'm very privileged to work for Strathmore Music Center as a mentor to the Artists in Residence program. And this has been, don't tell the mentees, but this is so awesome for me to be able to work in that capacity. But I see so much creativity. I see so much openness. I see a globalization of musical open-mindedness, which is fascinating to me. I've always, as you know, I'm French Canadian, so I grew up in French, listening to French music and French chansons, but I live in a completely different context. However, I'm able to integrate these elements, and they're accepted. People are actually, it's not, what I do is not straight ahead jazz, and it's not R&B. It's kind of my own melting pot, and people are responding to it. So that's the thing to be hopeful for. I think there's place for who you are as an artist and as a musician. There's an audience. And right now, as we know, we've got many different platforms to find our niche, to find our people. And it can be, a small stage, a small festival, or it can be so much bigger. I think Amy was bold to dream of creating something she wanted to see for herself, and that obviously a lot of people responded to it. So I think I'm hopeful for boldness, and for a vision, and for a dream, and yeah. I hope that gives you an idea of what goes on in my head.
Absolutely. Amy, thoughts?
Oh, nice. That sounds so nice. I'm like not a good optimist. I try to be a good optimist, but I'm not. I'm like, everything's crap. No, Lynn, that is lovely. And I do think that this is a moment for me, and it's one of the only things I can speak about, because I been hanging out with myself a lot. And for me, it's been very rewarding to find women in other places that are doing similar things. So I've been taking this time to dig into that and see what other like women musician organizations are out there and what they've been doing. And a lot of things I've performed at before or met people before, but now it's expanding even more into a global space, which I think is really great. And what we have here is different than what everyone else has, their scenario in every other city, in every other country, in every other space. I remember the first collaboration I did in Sweden. That's the first international thing I did with Washington Women in Jazz. And, since then we've moved on to doing several other embassy and exchange collaborations. And the first one I went to Sweden, I found out that that the federal government supplies funding for venues, and that you don't get that funding unless you have at least 50% women on your programming. And I was like, well, that's nice. So there's lots of ideas that we can exchange, and that makes us think a little bit differently and bigger. in a global mind frame, even looking at like what the Seattle Musicians Union is doing and what the Austin Musicians Union is doing, and how we can bring that to DC. What is happening with, recently was a guest speaker for a women in jazz organization in South Africa, and they have a women, what is it called? Jazz Girls Day. So, which is now an international program for middle school girls. So just being able to see what people are doing in different places is keeping me optimistic that because I love traveling like Lynn. It's like I want to do everything. I want to bring all these different elements into the music, and it's always great to do that here in DC because people trust me. But it's also great to be able to take that somewhere else, and to collaborate with people and develop something different. So I'm looking forward to when we start traveling again, these connections that I've been working on, and hopefully that my community can benefit from, is going to South America and working with some of these women, going to Europe again and working in several different countries. I've never been to South Africa. I have a great saxophonist I met who's in Botswana. I have a great drummer that I know in South Korea. I have a great guitar player that she's in Thailand. Like, there's all these people that I want to work with, and travel and play with. And I'm hoping that those people can come here. That's what I'm looking forward to. And then I can go and take other people with me, and we can travel to those places. So that's I'm looking forward to leaving my house. I don't know, but I am optimistic that those types of things are going to be important, because we're going to be looking for new ideas, because this has decimated what we've been doing, and it needed to be blown up. Honestly, the club system was not working. Playing in restaurants never paid anybody's rent. Like, this is this needed to be blown up. So I'm looking forward to stealing other people's ideas and putting them to work here in DC, so that we can hopefully move forward in a direction where we can support our musicians in the city. So.
Absolutely. We have one final question. This one comes from Connor Couch. Hello, Connor. Nice to see you.
Hi, Connor.
So this is a question, I think, again, for both of you. If you aren't a musician yourself, how can you help advocate for policy change for local musicians? Which I think is actually a really great question for us to end on. Speaking of optimism, we've talked, I think, about things to be hopeful for, perhaps in a passive sense. And now we can kind of approach it from an active point of view. How you can actively create that hope and that opportunity, whether you're listening right now or whether you're listening 10 years from now. So, Lynn, I think, again, I'd love to start with you. What are some ways that we can do that?
Thanks, but I'm gonna pass this right on to Amy, because she yeah, I'm the moderator, right? So
Yeah,
the thing
that's true.
is,
You're totally within your rights. Yeah.
You win. I think
because specifically Amy has been active. I mean, she talked briefly about policy and what she dreams will happen. So let's take it there.
Yeah.
Amy, go for
I
it.
mean, there are already a lot of policy initiatives that are underway. Some that have already failed. In the last year, that so many things have been introduced, and so many types of funding have been tried to be acquired by the music community and by the venues, and by everyone who works in the arts in the area. So I think the top thing to do is to think about the who your representatives are, starting with the smallest possible area and getting larger. So, thinking about, like I'm already thinking about, well, the summer is going to be outdoor concerts. There's nothing will be happening this summer unless it's outdoors. So there's a ton of parks in DC. So then thinking about, well, is this your ward? Is there a space that you can help put on an event, to help organize an event? There's so many organizations and loose affiliations that are happening. So, for example, in DC, we have a group of people who are meeting every Monday and Thursday. That's part of Capitol Hill Jazz Foundation. They have a twice weekly meetings. So we've been, it's mostly venue owners and festival organizers, but it's also ended up a lot of other musicians, educators, Washington Jazz Arts Institute, the musicianship, just trying to like stay organized about who's doing what and who can amplify what. And that is something that you can very easily become involved in, because we have a newsletter. So you can, if you're in DC and you're interested in policy and changes, and funding is the key word. When we talk about policy, all we're talking about is money and tax breaks. People think, oh, the policy. No, we're talking about ways to make people give you money, or ways to make people make you pay less money. Like, this is what we're talking about.
Right.
And so, you know, we've had some successful initiatives, especially Capitol Hill Jazz Foundation last year passed a lovely tax relief for venues that have more than 40 hours of music, of live music, that they can get tax relief. Unfortunately, this was not the year for it. But, you know, that will be, going forward, will be a great encouragement and enticement for venues to have more musicians, restaurants, and whoever. So just thinking about what kind of small things we can do within the community, but then also on a larger level, being able to support the arts in the community. Those are the types of things that I know people are always like, oh, call your senator, call your, you know, call this, call that, do this. But if you can go on a lot of the advocacy groups like American for the Arts, and they have campaigns that will say specific times where you're pushing for certain types of legislation or certain types of funding, so that you can back those, and you can say, this is important to me. Another one is the NEA. You know, they don't do legislative work, but they also will have, you know, that type of information on what type of funding they're getting. And then your regional arts organization, here we're Mid-Atlantic Arts Foundation. They have a lot of, you know, information on their website. So you just kind of have to dig a little bit, depending on what area you're in. But it's really easy to contact anyone who is in government for you, on the smallest level to the largest level, from your ward to your president, you know, all of these things, and then just to amplify what is happening in the community, because there's already a lot going on in terms of legislation, in terms of new policies being made, and those things are going to continue to be super, super important, and have been. The last year has been just devastating. So thinking about what we're going to do going forward, how we can get that money into the arts organizations, so that we can continue to have music and continue to have events in the future. So, but yeah, if you're a DC person, I would definitely check out Capitol Hill Jazz Foundation, because they are doing more than just DC policy. They're doing policy in Congress. So reopening the jazz census. So it's not specifically just for, a lot of these things will apply to all musicians and a lot of artists in general. So, you know, looking for better numbers on streaming, better, just tons and tons of things are happening right now. And so Capitol Hill Jazz Foundation has a great newsletter that keeps you sort of abreast of their policies in DC.
I just knew she could answer that question much better than me. But I'd like to add a little bit. So on the educational level. So if if there's no music education in your county, in your school, work at that level. You know, even if you don't have kids, you can still work at that level, because we need to grow a community. And, Amy's story is a prime example. She's gone to this elite school, which is it's the heart of DC. And it should be this opportunity. My kids have gone to my local school, and the music program was so sad, so sad. Year after year after year, they keep doing the same songs that honestly you're wondering if it's propaganda, because they do the same songs about Shenandoah and stuff like that. There's so much more. I mean, seriously, there's so much more. And I've had personal conversations with the educators, and it did not it led to nothing. So obviously you can start there or you can start higher, but you also need to be part of that conversation. We need to grow a community of, people who can play music professionally or just for themselves, and then enjoy, the arts. It's such a vital part.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, unfortunately, we have to leave it there. As much as I would love to keep going for hours and hours, you both are wonderful, and so insightful. Unfortunately, we have to wrap things up. But thank you both for being here.
Thank you
Amy, if you
so
could tell
much.
us, of course, Amy, if you could tell us one more time. So the festival begins on March 6th. Is
Yes.
that
And we
correct?
go through, so it'll be every Saturday and Monday in March. And everything is the Saturdays at 6 p.m. and the Mondays are 7 p.m. So, but you can find everything on the website, washingtonwomenandjazz.com/events, is the calendar. And then also our Facebook page, you can see um, all the streaming shows. So you can watch there, and you can also watch on our YouTube channel, our brand new. It's not really new. I think I started a long time ago, but I just remembered that we have one YouTube channel. So yeah, so you
Go
can watch it
subscribe.
there. Yeah.
I want to add one little thing. Some policymakers are music lovers too. Next Monday, I'm performing with Senator Tim Kaine, who's going to
Oh
be
yeah.
is going to be on harmonica, and so he's, I'm sure he's all for it. So don't be shy.
Yeah. That's
Wow. Not bad. All right. Well, we'll see if we can get Senator Tim Kaine to come by Odyssey as well while he's while he's on the road. Um,
He's gonna be. It's a Blues Alley live stream. I'm sure
no kidding.
he'd love to talk to you guys.
Yeah, that would be awesome. All right. Thank you both so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Mark.
being here.
So good to see
Please,
you, Amy.
of course. Please make sure you follow Odyssey on our website at odyssey-arts.org. Please follow our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube page. Our next speaker series is with Rebecca Caru. She's the director of Brass Out Loud Project, which is a new brass workshop that was founded this year. And she is also the founder of Mind Over Practice, a mental health and practice blog. So please be sure to check out her work. She'll be joining us in March. We'll have more information out about that pretty soon. So thank you guys so much, and take care and have a great rest of your night. Thank you.
Mark. Wonderful.
awesome. Thank you guys. Talk to you soon.
Bye.